Welcome to the Crying Inside channel. This is where we share emotional family stories, sometimes sweet, but other times shockingly cruel. If this is your first visit, hit subscribe so you don't miss stories that might make you reflect on your own life. Today, I'm going to tell you a heartbreaking and shocking story about a woman who reached the peak of success only to be betrayed by those she loved most. Rebecca Coleman, a businesswoman born and raised in Chicago, built a tech company from scratch. After years of non-stop hard work, she sold the company for $1 billion, believing that the American dream had finally come true. She thought family happiness would be the well-deserved reward after all her struggles. But little did she know that huge fortune would become a trap, leading her husband and sister to team up and hatch a cruel plan to get rid of her forever. On a luxury yacht in the Caribbean Sea, under the moonlight reflecting on the water, Rebecca was pushed into the sea by her own sister. The husband she trusted just stood by, wearing a cold smile. In that moment, she clearly heard the cruel whisper, "Say hello to the sharks for me." Can you believe it? The person you love most, the one you once protected, could turn into a killer just for money? That night, the Caribbean sky was cloaked in mysterious darkness. The moon hung low, its faint light shimmering on the rippling water. The luxurious yacht named Crystal Dream drifted quietly in the open sea, its warm yellow lights from the deck, creating a scene both romantic and eerie. No one on shore knew this place was about to become the scene of a brutal murder plot. Rebecca Coleman stepped onto the top deck, her long brown hair blowing in the sea breeze. She looked up at the starry sky, feeling a vague sense of unease. The dinner party had just ended, wine still lingering on her lips, and the laughter of her husband Andrew Carter and sister Samantha echoed somewhere behind. Rebecca thought it was just a short vacation, a chance to mend family ties, a trip to momentarily forget the work pressures after $1 billion deal. But her heart kept whispering that something was very wrong. She had just turned to step down, when suddenly she felt a strong push from behind. Her whole body was thrown off the yacht's edge, hurtling through the air. In that brief moment, Rebecca caught a glimpse of Samantha's face, eyes blazing with hatred and a wicked smile on her lips. Nearby, Andrew stood with his arms crossed, a cold smirk curling his lips, as if this was a scene he had long awaited. Rebecca clearly heard Samantha's whisper echo in her ears before she fell into the sea. Her sister's voice was low, slow, and full of malice. The howling waves blended with the sea wind's roar. Rebecca fell at a speed that tore through the air around her. The icy ocean water lashed her body like thousands of tiny knives. Every breath felt choked in her chest. She flailed in the dense darkness, only seeing the yacht's fading yellow lights. For a moment, Rebecca thought she was truly dead, that the ocean would swallow her whole, leaving Andrew and Samantha free to squander the vast fortune she had built her whole life. On the deck, Andrew put his arm around Samantha's shoulder, as if they had just completed a ritual of liberation. Without any more worries, they believed their plan had succeeded perfectly. Rebecca had disappeared into the night, and no one would find her body. Everything was perfectly arranged. Andrew would become the grieving widower, Samantha, the sorrowful sister who lost her sibling. They would hold complete control over the wealth, fame, and luxurious life they longed for. But what they never expected was that Rebecca was not dead. In the cold water, Rebecca rose above her fear. She opened her eyes, chest burning, lungs feeling like they'd burst, but her will to survive blazed on. The image of Andrew's cold smile and Samantha's ruthless gaze stabbed at her heart. They had betrayed her, conspired to kill her. Its family, the ones she loved most. Rebecca felt a sharp pain in her heart, even stronger than the ocean's cold. But she knew she couldn't give up. She used to be a college swimmer. Years ago, while training in the freezing waters of Chicago, her coach told her something that now echoed like a life-or-death command. Never let the water decide your fate. You are the one who decides. Rebecca held her breath, trying to steady her breathing, then kicked hard to break the surface. Salt water flooded her nose, stinging her eyes, but she finally broke through. Air rushed into her lungs, burning but bringing life. In front of her, the magnificent Crystal Dream yacht was slowly disappearing, its golden lights reduced to a small speck blending into the night. Rebecca knew that if she died here, everything would be over. The company, the dream, and her whole life would be buried at the bottom of the sea. She couldn't let that happen, She couldn't let Andrew and Samantha win. She couldn't let greed and betrayal take the final victory. She flipped over, switching to backstroke to save energy. The sea breeze blew cold across her face, and her eyes gazed up at the star-filled sky. Amid the vastness of the ocean, Rebecca felt small, but not powerless. A flicker of hope sparked in her mind. She was alive. She had to live. They thought she would die. They believed the waves would wash away all traces. But Andrew and Samantha were wrong. Rebecca Coleman would not only survive, she would come back. And when she does, she wouldn't just be a victim, but the one who ends it all. Rebecca Coleman was born and raised in a modest neighborhood in the suburbs of Chicago. Her parents were both high school teachers who valued knowledge and hard work above all else. Since she was a child, Rebecca had been different. While other kids played outside or focused on social activities, Rebecca preferred sitting for hours by the old computer her dad bought from an electronics clearance store. It was a bulky computer, the screen flickering, the hard drive whining every time it started up. But to Rebecca, it was a whole world. From the age of 12, she taught herself to type simple commands and explore basic programming games. She read books at the library and reviewed programming materials her parents had accidentally brought home from school. Her persistence amazed her teachers. While her friends struggled with basic math problems, Rebecca joined the school's computer clubs, where she often won small programming contests. This difference became even more pronounced when compared to her younger sister Samantha. Samantha was naturally charismatic from birth. Since she was little, her younger sister stood out with her bright face, cheerful smile, and outgoing personality. Samantha loved attention, enjoyed performances, and loved being on stage. At school events, when Samantha wore colorful dresses and shined like a star, Rebecca quietly stood in the corner, her eyes fixed on her small laptop screen. On one side was the stage light and applause. On the other was a black screen with lines of green code. The two sisters grew up under the same roof, but seemed to belong to two different worlds. Their parents loved them both, but Rebecca always felt that Samantha made them prouder. At family gatherings, relatives often praised Samantha's beauty and liveliness, while Rebecca's academic achievements usually received only respectful nods. That didn't make Rebecca sad. Instead, it was like a silent challenge, pushing her to prove she was valuable too, just in a different way. The turning point came when Rebecca was 15. The school's computer science teacher, Mr. Wilson, recognized her special talent. He gave her advanced assignments, let her access the computer lab after school, and encouraged her to enter state-level competitions. In a major programming contest, Rebecca won second place, beating dozens of older contestants. Mr. Wilson told her something she never forgot. "You have a special gift, nurture it, and it will open doors that many others will never reach." Those words became Rebecca's guiding light through difficult years ahead. When she turned 18, Rebecca was admitted to Northwestern University, majoring in computer science. But the problem was money. Her family could only support a small part. The rest Rebecca had to handle on her own. Not giving up, she worked while studying. During the day, she worked at a coffee shop near campus. In the afternoons, she was on duty at the library, organizing books and helping other students look up materials. On weekends, she took extra jobs providing tech support for small local businesses. Juggling 3 jobs at once left her with almost no time to rest. Those nights, Rebecca sat in her dorm room, the computer screen's light casting a tired glow on her face, her eyes dark from lack of sleep. But inside her burned a fierce passion. She believed these sacrifices were not in vain. Every line of code she wrote, every hard hour of work, was a step closer to the future she dreamed of. Meanwhile, Samantha chose a completely different path. Her younger sister studied communications in California with a small scholarship, while their parents had to dip into all their savings to support the rest. Samantha loved the spotlight, enjoyed going to parties, and the feeling of being admired by others. When Samantha called home, her voice was full of excitement, talking about events, auditions, and outings with friends, and Rebecca quietly smiled. While her sister lived in a world of lively parties, Rebecca lived in the world of programming, where numbers and algorithms were her joy. However, Rebecca never resented Samantha. On the contrary, she often helped her sister financially when Samantha complained about running out of money for rent or shopping. Though sometimes feeling it wasn't fair, Rebecca still believed that sisterhood was the most important thing. Those college years shaped Rebecca into a resilient person. She learned to work under intense pressure, to persevere when the whole world seemed against her. She learned to stand firm without needing immediate recognition from anyone. Those experiences made Rebecca strong, ready to face any challenge. When she walked out of Northwestern's gates, diploma in hand, Rebecca carried not just knowledge but an unshakable belief. She knew she could make a difference. And she never forgot the sleepless nights, the exhausting extra hours, the silent tears. All of it shaped her into someone who wouldn't easily give up. Rebecca Coleman, a girl raised in an ordinary family in Chicago, had no idea she would later become a victim of the cruelest betrayal. But it was that foundation of perseverance and willpower in her youth that gave her the strength to survive when everything seemed to fall apart. And it's that same strength that would bring her back to face the betrayal from those she once loved the most. Rebecca grew up in a typical middle-class family in the American Midwest. The two-story house with a white picket fence, a small front yard, and a big oak tree providing shade was her childhood home. Midwestern Americans usually live simply, value hard work, and cherish traditions. Rebecca's parents, both dedicated teachers, taught her and her sister that success doesn't come from luck but from persistent effort. Big holidays were always a time for family gatherings. On Thanksgiving, the family would prepare roast turkey, mashed potatoes, and pumpkin pie. Her father would often say the blessing, reminding everyone to be grateful for what they have. Christmas was also a special occasion. Rebecca clearly remembers snowy evenings spent by the fireplace, opening presents under a tree decorated with twinkling lights and sparkling ornaments. Relatives from all over would come, the dining table packed, laughter filling the house. Those moments bonded the family and reminded Rebecca that no matter how harsh the outside world could be, home was always a place to return to. But when Rebecca grew up and entered the tech world, she realized the difference between traditional family culture and the fast-paced life in Silicon Valley. Here, she encountered a completely new culture. Startups weren't just businesses. They were almost like a religion. Young people gathered in cafes, brainstorming ideas, preparing for short but high-pressure pitches in front of investors. Pitch decks, product demos, and networking at conferences became part of their daily routine. Rebecca once attended tech conferences in San Francisco, where hundreds of startups squeezed into a large auditorium. Each person had a few minutes on stage to convince investors that their idea was the future. The atmosphere was both tense and exciting. Handshakes, hallway conversations, referral letters, all could decide success or failure. That startup culture was tough, but also incredibly attractive. It reflects one of the biggest American beliefs, the American dream. From nothing, anyone can rise up. From working class to millionaire, even billionaire. Rebecca's success is clear proof of that. She used to be a girl living in a cramped apartment working 3 jobs at once to pay tuition. But after just a few years, with faith and effort, she built a company worth billions. The American dream isn't just about money. It's about beating the odds, proving that persistence can change your life. Every time she signed a deal with an investor, Rebecca felt she was reaching what millions of Americans long for. She didn't just live for herself, but became a symbol for anyone who thought a poor start meant a hopeless future. However, American culture also has a dark side. The bigger the success, the greater the pressure. Americans idolize outstanding individuals, but quickly turn their backs when scandal or failure hits. Rebecca understood that the world she was entering wasn't like warm family dinners with turkey and pumpkin pie. This was a place where handshakes could hide schemes, where success made her a target. And in that context, the betrayal by her husband and sister was even more painful. Rebecca had lived fully for the American dream, but she didn't expect that dream to turn into a nightmare. After graduating, Rebecca didn't choose the safe path of working long-term for big corporations. She took a programmer position at a mid-sized tech company in Chicago, but deep down she knew it was just a stepping stone. By day, she worked like any other employee. By night, she returned to her small apartment to continue her personal project. The idea she had nurtured since college was an artificial intelligence system capable of analyzing human emotions through digital data. Rebecca called it Neuralink AI. The goal of the system was to read and understand text, voice, and online behavior to identify emotional states and respond appropriately. Back then, many industry experts thought the idea was far-fetched, believing machines couldn't understand human emotions. But for Rebecca, that skepticism only fueled her determination to prove them wrong. In the early days, Neuralink AI was just a few thousand lines of code running tests on her personal computer. Rebecca spent all her savings on renting servers, buying more materials and software. Time almost disappeared. She worked 8 hours at her job, then came home to code for another 8 hours, not even taking weekends off. Dark circles under her eyes, hands rough from constant typing. Friends rarely saw her at gatherings, and her family grew worried seeing their daughter thinner than before. But Rebecca believed that one day, her hard work would pay off. When Neuralink AI started showing its first results, Rebecca decided to step out of her comfort zone. She quit her job and used all her savings, about $60,000, to start a small company called Neuralink AI. It was a risky leap. The office was just a tiny rented room on the outskirts of San Jose, with 2 old wooden desks and 3 young employees sharing the same passion. But in Rebecca's heart, it was the beginning of a big dream. Yet, starting a business was never easy. Rebecca presented her product to investors. Many showed interest, but then declined. They said the technology was impressive, but too risky, especially since the founder was a young woman without a business background. More than once, Rebecca heard the same repeated phrase: her idea was great, but she wasn't someone worth betting on. Those rejections kept her awake at night, sometimes nearly making her want to give up. But fate gave her a chance. In a small experiment with a social media platform, Neuralink AI's algorithm detected early signs of depression in a group of users. This result was included in the test report and accidentally caught the attention of several healthcare organizations. They realized that Rebecca's technology wasn't just for commercial purposes, but also had the potential to save lives. That was a turning point. Mental health organizations began to take interest, and many psychologists praised it as a key tool for early detection of mental illnesses. The media also started mentioning Neuralink AI as an example of humane technology. In just 18 months, from a small startup, Neuralink AI grew to more than 100 employees. A new office was opened in the heart of Silicon Valley, and the company's valuation quickly reached $50 million. Just then, Rebecca met Andrew Carter. It was at a tech conference held in New York, gathering hundreds of startups and venture capitalists. Rebecca took the stage to present Neuralink AI, explaining how the system could interpret voices and detect emotional changes. The audience was silent and focused, then burst into applause. Among the crowd that day, Andrew stood out. He was tall, handsome, dressed in a finely tailored suit with sharp eyes. Andrew came from a wealthy New York family and was a well-known venture capitalist in the AI field. After the presentation, he approached to shake Rebecca's hand, praising her intelligence and persistence. That compliment wasn't like the usual polite words Rebecca had heard before. Andrew asked detailed questions about the technology, listening and engaging with genuine interest. For Rebecca, it was the first time she met a man who didn't underestimate her abilities. While many investors only saw risks, Andrew saw opportunities. While many judged her by her gender and age, Andrew showed respect. That difference caught Rebecca's attention. The conference in New York marked a turning point not only for Rebecca's career, but for her life. She had built a successful company. The American dream was unfolding right before her eyes. But at the same time, fate arranged for her to meet the man who would change everything. What seemed like a chance encounter later revealed to Rebecca as the beginning of a new chapter in her life. After the tech conference in New York, Andrew began to pursue Rebecca persistently and thoughtfully. He sent flowers to her office, looked for every chance to meet her at events, and was always there when she needed advice or encouragement. Rebecca, used to loneliness and rejection in the startup world, felt for the first time the warm care of a successful man. Within just a few months, their relationship grew quickly. A year later, they held a small wedding by the California coast. Rebecca wore a simple but elegant white dress, her eyes shining as she walked beside Andrew. Friends, colleagues, and some close investors were all there. Samantha also appeared as the maid of honor, hugging her sister and shedding tears. At that moment, Rebecca truly believed that happiness had smiled upon her. After years of sacrifice and effort, she had found the man she could spend her life with. But married life was never as simple as those glamorous wedding photos. In the first few months, Andrew seemed like the perfect husband. He helped Rebecca with work, introduced her to new connections, and skillfully gave business advice. Rebecca believed she had made the right choice. However, gradually, a puzzling truth began to surface, and at the center of those cracks was Samantha. Samantha often showed up at their new Miami mansion, finding every excuse to stay. Sometimes she said she needed rest after a failed fashion project. Other times she complained about running out of rent money in Los Angeles. Rebecca, being caring, couldn't bring herself to refuse her sister. She believed supporting Samantha was also a way to heal the sisterly bond that had been distant for years. At first, Rebecca was happy to have more company, but Samantha's presence became more and more frequent. Her younger sister no longer just visited for a few days, but gradually stayed for weeks, then months. What troubled Rebecca wasn't just the annoyance, but how Andrew and Samantha behaved around each other. Rebecca began noticing the strange looks they exchanged. At dinner sometimes, Andrew would make a joke only Samantha laughed at, like they shared secrets no one else knew. Sometimes, Rebecca caught Andrew's gaze lingering too long on his sister's face. At first, she thought it was just her imagination, that she was being too sensitive. But as the details repeated, they became small cracks she couldn't ignore. One evening, Rebecca passed by the living room and saw Andrew and Samantha sitting close, whispering with their heads together. When Rebecca walked in, they startled and pulled apart, trying to look casual. Andrew said he was just advising Samantha on a small investment. Rebecca nodded, but still felt heavy inside. The unease grew over time. Rebecca noticed Andrew often took the initiative to arrange shopping trips with Samantha, or drove her to places without telling Rebecca beforehand. When Rebecca asked, Andrew just smiled and said he wanted to help her sister find a new path, that it was family business. Samantha acted innocent, saying Rebecca was just being too suspicious. Even the small gestures made Rebecca uneasy. At a small party, standing from a distance, Rebecca saw Andrew's hand rest on Samantha's shoulder longer than usual. When they talked, there were awkward silences when Rebecca entered the room. Those pieces piled up, not clear enough for accusations, but enough to tear at a wife's heart. Rebecca tried to convince herself Andrew was her husband, Samantha her sister, and she shouldn't doubt family. She had always believed in family love and loyalty. Yet, lying beside Andrew at night, listening to his steady breathing, Rebecca felt an invisible distance growing between them. She wondered if she was losing the most precious thing after having everything others only dream of. From a poor girl who rose to become a billionaire, Rebecca now faces her deepest fear. It's not losing the company, nor financial failure, but losing love and trust within her family. Rebecca didn't realize that those small signs were just the beginning of a much bigger scheme. A plot woven from greed, jealousy, and betrayal, right inside the home she believed was her safest place. Rebecca's greatest career success came in 2021 when a global tech corporation proposed to buy Neuralink AI. After months of tense negotiations, the deal was signed for a jaw-dropping $1 billion. Rebecca, once a poor girl working 3 jobs to pay tuition, had become one of the richest young female entrepreneurs in America. On the official announcement day, the media flooded the news, and Rebecca's image appeared on the covers of major magazines. She smiled in a navy blue suit, confident eyes, but deep inside was an indescribable emotion. Her lifelong efforts had finally been recognized. The celebration party for the successful deal was held at her new Miami mansion, where Rebecca stood before hundreds of guests, raised a glass of wine, and declared that this was not just her victory, but proof of the American dream. Yet, from that very moment, darkness began to creep into Rebecca's life. At the party, amid the lively guests, Rebecca suddenly caught Andrew and Samantha exchanging a strange look. That glance lasted only a few seconds, but made her heart ache. It wasn't a normal look between a brother-in-law and sister-in-law, but more like a secret signal between 2 allies. Rebecca tried to brush it off, telling herself she was probably too sensitive after all the recent stress. But from that day on, she couldn't forget that image. In the following days, Rebecca noticed Andrew becoming increasingly distant. He often made excuses to go on business trips, sweet messages became rare, and sometimes he sneaked away to take calls in a hushed, hurried voice. Meanwhile, Samantha suddenly showed up more often, almost treating her sister's mansion like her own home. Sometimes he said he needed to stay over to rest. Other times he used the excuse of wanting to explore business opportunities in Miami. Rebecca didn't want to think the worst, but a vague worry began to take shape. One night, when Andrew left his office, Rebecca sneaked in to check his computer. Using her tech knowledge, she accessed the browsing history and found that he had been researching a lot about international money transfer laws and offshore bank accounts. Not only that, he also accessed their joint financial accounts, checking withdrawal limits and inheritance terms. Rebecca felt her heart racing wildly. These were no longer normal actions of a husband managing finances, but seemed like preparations for something bigger. The next day, Rebecca called an old friend, who used to work in cybersecurity, to get a recommendation for a reliable private investigator. She met Martin Ellis, a former investigator who had worked with the FBI. In the small office room, Rebecca recounted all her suspicions, from the strange looks between Andrew and Samantha to the traces she found on the computer. Martin listened carefully, took detailed notes, and promised to investigate discreetly. Just 3 days later, Martin called her back with a worried tone. He said that before meeting Rebecca, Andrew was deeply in debt due to failed investments and gambling habits. Those debts only disappeared after Andrew married Rebecca and gained access to her assets. That information shocked Rebecca. The man she trusted, who promised to build a future together, actually had a past he deliberately hid. Not only Andrew, but Samantha also revealed unbelievable secrets. Martin discovered that in the past 3 months, Samantha had been sending large cash deposits to a secret overseas account. The total amount exceeded $100,000, while Samantha never had a stable income. Rebecca didn't know where the money came from, but one thing was clear. Her sister was hiding something. When Martin presented all the evidence, Rebecca sat silently for hours in the office. All memories of family dinners, hugs, and sweet promises suddenly shattered like broken glass. She recalled the strange looks during the celebration party, the secret conversations, the unexplained intimate gestures. Everything connected like a dark picture, slowly coming into focus. Rebecca no longer had any doubts. Andrew and Samantha were plotting something. It wasn't just about money. It was probably something even more ruthless. She felt a chill run down her spine, thinking about the worst-case scenario. They didn't just want to use her. They might be trying to remove her from their lives entirely. That night, as the whole mansion lay silent, Rebecca sat by the window staring out at the ocean. The sound of the waves crashing reminded her that life isn't always about light. She had risen from the darkness of a poor childhood to become a billionaire. But now, darkness was coming from a different direction, more dangerous and unpredictable. And that darkness wore the faces of the husband and sister she once loved. Rebecca knew she couldn't be careless. She had to prepare to uncover the truth before it was too late. But she didn't expect things to have gone further than she imagined. The information Detective Martin provided shocked Rebecca, but also pushed her to act immediately. She was used to facing challenges with calm and strategy, so this time, instead of an emotional outburst, Rebecca quietly prepared. She decided to upgrade the mansion's security system, officially to improve protection, but in reality, she secretly installed new surveillance devices in Andrew's office, the living room, and even the hallway leading to the balcony. She wasn't naturally suspicious, but all the unusual signs forced her to find the truth. In the early days, the cameras only captured harmless images. Andrew working, Samantha walking around the house. But one fateful evening, pretending to be busy with an online meeting, she sat in her private room and opened the surveillance feed. The image from Andrew's office appeared, and what she heard made her blood run cold. Andrew was sitting at the desk, a stack of papers in front of him. Samantha stood opposite him, her eyes full of calculation. Andrew's voice lowered just enough for Rebecca to hear clearly. "Once her will takes effect, all the assets will belong to you." Samantha smiled softly, her hand tapping lightly on the table. "So, when do we make the move?" Andrew replied, "Next week's trip to the beach will be the perfect opportunity. Offshore in the Caribbean, if anything happens, it'll just look like an accident. The deep sea will swallow up all the evidence." Rebecca sat frozen, gripping the headset tightly. Those words confirmed her worst fears, not just the cold stares, not just the distance, but an actual plot. Her husband and sister were planning to kill her and take all her inheritance. Samantha continued, her face appearing on the camera screen. "You'll be the perfect witness. You'll cry and say, 'I slipped because I was drunk.' No one will suspect you." Andrew nodded, his eyes glinting coldly. "Everything will be settled in one night. Then we'll have it all." Rebecca bit her lip until it bled to stop herself from screaming. Her heart pounded wildly, sweat pouring down her forehead. Without these surveillance devices, she might never have believed it. The sister who once held her hand at graduation, the husband who promised to love her forever, they were now plotting to throw her to the bottom of the sea. From that moment, Rebecca knew she didn't have much time left. Andrew and Samantha had made their plan, and the upcoming yacht trip was the trap. The next day, Andrew entered the dining room with his usual smile, placing a stack of papers on the table. He spoke softly, as if nothing had happened. "Honey, I think we need a vacation. We've been working too hard for too long. The three of us should go to the Caribbean, rent a big yacht, just our family. What do you think?" Rebecca looked up at him. In his eyes, she caught a cold glint she had never noticed before. Samantha sat beside him, pretending to be excited. "Oh, that's wonderful! I've always dreamed of watching the sunset over the Caribbean Sea." Rebecca forced a smile. The idea sounded nice, and she answered evenly. But inside, her mind was screaming. From that moment on, each day felt like a dangerous game. Rebecca had to pretend she didn't know anything while also preparing to survive. She began making secret plans. First, she transferred a large sum of money into a separate account Andrew had no idea about, just in case of emergency. Next, she packed a pocket GPS tracker, a small satellite phone, and some cash hidden in her luggage. She also wrote a detailed letter, sealed it in an envelope, and sent it to her close assistant Jane, instructing her to open it if she didn't make contact within 3 days. Throughout the week leading up to the trip, Rebecca felt the tension rising. Andrew acted overly gentle, frequently checking on her health, even giving her a new necklace. Samantha suddenly became attentive too, making morning coffee and awkwardly hugging her goodnight. To outsiders, they looked like a happy family, but to Rebecca, it was all just a facade. She realized she was living under the same roof as two people waiting to kill her. That feeling made every meal, every conversation suffocating. Sometimes Rebecca wanted to confront them head on, to throw all the evidence in their faces, but her reason held her back. If she revealed that she knew, Andrew and Samantha wouldn't hesitate. And as Martin had warned, desperate people, driven by money, could do anything. The day of departure finally arrived. The sky was clear blue, the sea breeze strong, and the Crystal Dream yacht sparkled under the sun. To outsiders, it was a luxurious vacation, but to Rebecca, it was no different than a death sentence disguised in luxury. As she stepped onto the deck, each step felt heavy and burdensome. Andrew placed his hand on her shoulder, smiling warmly, but Rebecca felt that hand like a cold vice grip. Samantha excitedly took photos, posting them on social media, pretending it was just a normal trip. As the yacht pulled away from the dock, the engine's roar drowned out the sound of the waves. Rebecca stood at the railing, watching the shore fade away. Fear welled up inside her, but along with it, determination. If Andrew and Samantha thought she would disappear easily, they were wrong. Rebecca Coleman was no longer a girl easy to break. She had overcome poverty, fought to build a company from nothing, and now she would fight to save her own life. The fifth night on the Crystal Dream yacht, the Caribbean sky was draped in deep black. The sea breeze blew gently, waves lapping steadily against the hull, creating a sound both soothing and eerie. Rebecca sat on the top deck, gazing at the horizon, where a crescent moon hung like a delicate silver thread over the water. A sense of unease stirred inside her, a feeling that tonight would be a fateful moment. Andrew approached, carrying 3 colorful cocktails decorated with lime slices and tiny umbrellas. He smiled brightly, setting the drinks down, his voice full of fake concern. "Honey, I made you that special one you like. Give it a try. See if I still remember the recipe." Samantha quickly sat down beside her, eyes shining, her smile a little too forced. Rebecca took the glass, tilting it slightly to watch the red liquid shimmer under the moonlight. She smelled the strong alcohol mixed with fruity scents. Her instincts warned her the drink wasn't safe. Instead of drinking it, she skillfully tilted the glass so the liquid ran down the rim and dripped onto the dark wooden floor. Andrew turned to get more ice from the tray, unaware. A moment later, Rebecca pretended to sip the drink, tasted a bit, and smiled. "Delicious. You're still as good as when we first met." Andrew smiled, satisfied, his eyes quickly flicking to Samantha, signaling that the plan was underway. Just 10 minutes later, Rebecca began to fake dizziness, setting the glass down as her voice faltered. "I think I'm really tired. I need to lie down." Andrew quickly supported her, his voice gentle. Let me help you to the room. Samantha stood up, nodding in agreement, a knowing smile on her face. Inside the cabin, Rebecca lay down on the bed, eyes half closed but still alert. She heard Andrew checking her response, softly calling her name. Once he was sure Rebecca was knocked out, he gently locked the door and stepped outside. Through cracks and air vents, Rebecca overheard the muffled conversation happening just above the deck. Samantha whispered, her voice trembling with excitement, "When do we make our move?" Andrew replied, "Tonight's the time. No need to wait any longer. Just push her into the sea. No one will suspect. The police will see it as an accident." Samantha chuckled coldly. "I'll be the witness. I'll cry, scream that she was drunk, lost her balance, and fell. No one can expose us." Andrew nodded firmly. "Then, we'll have it all." Every word they said stabbed into Rebecca's heart, the pain of being betrayed by her own sister, and the husband she loved now burning with rage. She clenched her fists, her whole body tense from holding back, but Rebecca knew if she reacted too soon, she'd lose her chance to survive. She had to wait for the right moment. Around midnight, the door creaked open quietly. Andrew's footsteps sounded on the wooden floor, Samantha right behind him. Andrew whispered coldly, "It's time." Samantha said, "We have to be quick. The sailors are all resting below deck. No one will hear a thing." Rebecca felt Andrew's hand slip down her arm. Pulling her up, she relaxed her body, pretending to be unconscious. Samantha held her shoulders, both guiding Rebecca out into the hallway. She heard the strong crashing of waves, felt the sea breeze hit her face. When they reached the top deck, the cold moonlight covered the dark sea. Andrew leaned close, whispering into Samantha's ear, "Stand by the railing. We'll pretend she stepped out on her own." Rebecca let her body sway like someone losing consciousness. Samantha bent down, her face close, eyes burning with hatred. She whispered through clenched teeth, "Say hi to the sharks, sis." Immediately, Samantha's hand pushed hard against Rebecca's chest. She was thrown over the railing, falling straight into the void. In that instant, Rebecca saw Andrew standing behind, a cold smile curling at his lips. All the loving words from before were now nothing but bare lies. The wind howled past her ears, her body free-falling, and then the terrible impact with the water, like hundreds of knives slicing into her skin. The icy sea water flooded her mouth. Her lungs felt like they were about to explode. Rebecca flailed, her whole body in pain. Above, the yacht's yellow lights slowly shrank. The engine's roar drowned out all cries for help. In that moment, Rebecca realized they believed she was dead. Andrew and Samantha had cleared the last obstacle, but they didn't expect the woman sinking beneath the ocean would not give up so easily. And now, out there in the vast sea, she had to fight again this time, not just for her career, but for her very life. The water suddenly slammed shut over Rebecca's head, cold as thousands of needles piercing her skin. Her whole body went numb. Her lungs felt like they would explode from the air being forced out as she fell. In that moment, she almost gave up. But instantly, her survival instinct kicked in. Rebecca kicked hard with her legs, reaching her hands toward the faint light above. She burst out of the water with a gasp, mouth wide open, gasping for air. Before her eyes, the crystal dream yacht was drifting farther away. The bright yellow lights were now just a flickering streak, distant like a star. The engine's roar drowned out her calls, even though she tried to scream as loud as she could. She realized a terrifying truth. No one on the boat wanted to save her. Even if someone heard, they had been told to believe this was an accident. Rebecca floated in the deep, black ocean. All around her were waves and darkness. The cold seeped into her bones, making her body uncontrollably shiver. A fear even worse was lurking. The fear of the creatures hiding beneath the deep water. Samantha's sharp words echoed in her mind. "Say hi to the sharks." She pictured giant dark shapes swimming around, their sharp white teeth flashing in the night. Panic closed in, Rebecca's heart pounding wildly. Every instinct told her to struggle, but she remembered what her swim coach had told her at university. In cold water, the biggest enemy isn't sharks or waves, it's fear. Panic drains your strength twice as fast. She forced herself to breathe slowly and steadily, keeping her mind clear. Rebecca had been a freestyle swimmer on Northwestern's swim team. Though she never reached a professional level, she used to spend hours every day training in Chicago's icy pool. That memory has now become her source of strength. She reminds herself that she's gotten through exhausting laps and endured the biting cold. This ocean is just a bigger challenge. She flips onto her back, floating with the waves to conserve energy. The star-filled sky stretches above, reflecting on the water like countless twinkling lights. The scene is both beautiful and terrifying. Rebecca whispers to herself that she must live not just for revenge, but to prove they were wrong, to think they could erase her so easily. She reaches down to her stomach, where a waterproof pouch is hidden beneath her shirt. Inside are some cash, a satellite phone, and most importantly, a GPS beacon. Her hand trembles as she pulls it out and presses the signal button. A small green light blinks, signaling that the distress signal has been sent. But Rebecca knows well that out here in the vast ocean, there's no guarantee anyone will receive that signal. Time drags on slowly. The cold gradually numbs her body. Rebecca's teeth chatter, and her legs begin to cramp. She knows she can't keep swimming all night. The only way is to keep floating, conserving every bit of strength. She changes swimming positions, sometimes on her back, sometimes on her side, always keeping her breath steady. Waves crash over her, pulling Rebecca underwater and forcing her to swallow salty seawater. Every time she surfaces, she fights to keep seawater from filling her lungs. Her throat burns, her eyes sting. But Rebecca won't let herself give up. She repeats her old coach's advice over and over in her mind. Don't think about the whole night. Don't think about tomorrow. Just focus on each minute, each breath. One more minute, one more breath. Panic hits her several times, especially when she feels something brush past her leg. Rebecca froze. Her heart seemed to stop beating. In the darkness, every bump felt terrifying. But she told herself it could just be a patch of seaweed or a small fish. If she panicked, she would just sink faster. Time passed like it was endless. Rebecca swam while praying for the dawn's light to appear soon. And then, after hours of struggle, a faint streak of light appeared on the horizon. The sky was beginning to brighten. A flicker of hope sparked inside Rebecca. The first sunlight made her both relieved and worried. During the day, the cold eased, but the fear of dehydration set in. The harsh sun would quickly drain her strength, and her lips were already chapped. She silently thanked that the GPS beacon was still flashing its weak light. But the battery was limited. Rebecca hoped a ship would pass by before the signal went out. She tried to keep her mind busy to avoid panic. She remembered her childhood in Chicago, the cozy evenings sitting with her parents enjoying simple meals. She recalled the years working part-time to pay tuition, the sleepless nights perfecting the first algorithm for Neuralink AI. Those memories gave her the strength to believe she could overcome this challenge. At noon, when Rebecca was exhausted, her eyes blurred from sun and thirst, she suddenly saw something floating not far away. With her last bit of strength, she swam over and realized it was a seat cushion from a yacht swept away by the waves. She clung tightly to it. Her body was supported, and her head no longer submerged. A new spark of hope ignited. As evening fell, Rebecca began to hear the distant sound of a boat engine. She opened her eyes wide, her heart pounding. A small fishing boat appeared on the horizon. Rebecca waved the cushion vigorously, shouting hoarsely, but the boat kept heading in a different direction. Desperate, she activated the emergency flashing light on the GPS beacon. A faint light blinked out across the ocean. At the moment Rebecca thought all her efforts were in vain, the boat suddenly changed course. It slowly came closer. She saw two figures on the deck, a middle-aged man and a young guy. When they saw her, surprise showed clearly on their faces. They pulled Rebecca up. Her body trembled, lips turning blue. The man muttered, "A woman out here in the ocean, my God." Rebecca collapsed on the deck, breathing ragged but her eyes shining bright. She had survived. She had won the battle against the sea, against death. But she knew the real fight was still ahead. Andrew and Samantha believed she was dead, and that would become her biggest advantage. Rebecca closed her eyes, letting tears stream down. She whispered to herself, "I will come back, and when I do, I will end it all." When the fisherman father and son pulled her onto their boat, Rebecca was nearly exhausted. Her body was freezing, lips blue, breathing uneven. The middle-aged man introduced himself as Luis, and the young man was his son, Mateo. They looked at her in astonishment to see an American woman barely alive in the Caribbean Sea. Luis wrapped a blanket around her and asked urgently, "How did you end up here? Where's your boat?" Rebecca just shook her head and whispered, Accident. I fell off the yacht. Luis frowned, skeptical, but didn't ask further. He gave her small sips of water, then helped her to the cabin to rest. That whole night, Rebecca shivered violently, her body aching but her willpower rising strong. She had escaped death, but if she returned right away, Andrew and Samantha would wipe everything away, turning the truth into a sweet lie. No, she couldn't let that happen. The next morning, after regaining some strength, Rebecca sat on the fishing boat's deck, looking toward the horizon. The Mexican coast was only a few hours away by boat. Luis came closer and handed her a hot cup of coffee. He spoke slowly. "Young lady, your situation isn't just a simple accident, is it?" Rebecca was silent for a moment, then replied, "You're right. Someone close to me tried to kill me. If I go back now, they'll keep lying, and I won't have any proof." Luis nodded, his face serious. "So, what do you plan to do?" Rebecca stared out at the sea, her voice steady. "I'm going to fake my death, and when the time comes, I'll return with the truth." From that moment, a new plan began to take shape. Rebecca rented a small room in a remote fishing village on the coast of Mexico. There, she dyed her hair black, cut it short, completely changing her appearance. Under the fake name Maria Torres, she became a woman unknown to her past. The news quickly reported that Rebecca Coleman had disappeared at sea, suspected to have had an accident while yachting with her husband and sister. Andrew appeared on television with red-rimmed eyes, saying he was heartbroken over the loss of his beloved wife. Beside him, Samantha cried, saying her sister had been drinking, stumbled, and fell into the sea. Watching that scene on the old television in her room, Rebecca trembled with anger and shivered at the same time. They're acting way too perfectly. If I hadn't heard and seen it with my own ears and eyes, I might have believed it too, but that very deception only strengthened her resolve. To prepare for her comeback, Rebecca needed a team. The first person she contacted was Theodore Blake, a seasoned lawyer who had advised her on many deals. Theodore had warned Rebecca about Andrew from the start, and now he couldn't hide his shock hearing her story. "My God, Rebecca, I suspected him, but I never thought he'd go this far," Rebecca calmly replied. "I need you to help me gather legal evidence. When I come back, I want the police and courts to have no way to deny it." Theodore agreed immediately, promising to keep everything strictly confidential. The second person is Olivia Chang, a young hacker Rebecca once hired for Neuralink AI. Olivia is known for her ability to breach networks and recover deleted data. When she heard that Rebecca was still alive, she broke down crying over the secure line, then immediately pledged her support. "I'll dig up everything Andrew and Samantha tried to hide. Emails, messages, financial transactions. I'll give you the things they thought were gone forever." The last person is Martin Ellis, a private detective who once investigated Andrew's past. When Rebecca called him, Martin was silent for a long moment, then said, "I owe you my life. If I hadn't given you that info back then, you might not have been ready now. I'm going to see this through to the end." 3 people, 3 pieces, forming a secret team with Rebecca. They communicated through encrypted channels set up by Olivia. Online meetings took place in the shadows, each in a different place, but sharing the same goal. Theodore handled the legal side, reviewing all documents related to assets and wills. He uncovered many irregularities in the statements Andrew filed with the court after Rebecca was declared missing. Some forged signatures, some bank accounts quickly transferred. Olivia hacked into Andrew's personal server. She recovered a bunch of deleted emails, including many conversations between Andrew and Samantha. The cold words appeared. "When will we end this? Wait until she dies. Then the money will be ours. Or maybe she's stupid for trusting you. We'll live the life we've dreamed of." Each line stabbed straight into Rebecca's heart, but also served as undeniable proof. Martin tracked things on the ground. He followed Andrew and Samantha, recording their lavish shopping trips, unusual real estate investments, even opening foreign bank accounts. He also captured photos of both attending private parties, where Andrew openly held Samantha's hand like a couple. Gradually, the full picture came into view. Andrew had been targeting Rebecca for a long time. He didn't marry her for love, but for the potential fortune. Samantha, fueled by childhood jealousy, became the perfect tool. They planned, waiting for the day Rebecca would sell the company to make their move. Her death was just the final step in a game they had set up long ago. In a damp rental room in Mexico, Rebecca stared at her computer screen as the evidence appeared, one by one. Her heart was both shattered and burning with anger. Everything was clear now, a plan that caught Andrew and Samantha off guard, forcing them to face justice. Rebecca gently touched the tiny GPS beacon that had saved her life. On that night at sea, she thought it was just a faint glimmer. But that preparation gave her more time, more chances. And this time would be no different. She would prepare every little detail so that when she returned, nothing could save Andrew and Samantha. The old Rebecca died in the Caribbean Sea. The woman sitting in this rented room was no longer a victim. She was the survivor, the one who would come back to end this betrayal game. And when she returned, she would bring a special gift for the two who had thrown her to the bottom of the sea. When the news of the yacht accident hit the evening broadcasts, audiences across America were shocked. The media flooded with images of Rebecca Coleman, the talented businesswoman who had just sold her company for $1 billion, alongside tragic headlines about her disappearance at sea and presumed death. Major newspapers ran headlines from the American dream to ocean tragedy. Andrew appeared at the first press conference, wearing a white shirt, his face gaunt and eyes bloodshot. He choked up in front of the cameras, saying that on that night when he woke up and couldn't find his wife, he and his sister searched the entire deck, but found only cold emptiness and the sound of waves. Andrew's voice trembled. "I loved her with all my heart, and now I don't know how to live without her." Beside him, Samantha wore a black dress, holding a tissue to wipe her tears, her shoulders shaking with sobs. She said through tears, "My sister was the most talented person I have ever known. I can't believe she left us forever." Images of the two were widely shared across social media. The public mourned. Many expressed sympathy and shared posts praising Rebecca's career and extraordinary strength. But at the same time, some praised Andrew and Samantha for their courage to stand in front of the public and share their pain. They became the center of attention, receiving countless condolences, letters, and even gifts from strangers. Just weeks later, the local court officially issued a death certificate for Rebecca. The reason stated clearly: missing at sea, no hope of survival. Her vast assets were immediately transferred according to her will. Andrew, as her husband, controlled most of the estate and remaining investments. Samantha, as the family heir, received a significant portion. Everything happened quickly and smoothly, as if it had been planned in advance. Shortly after, the lavish lifestyle began. Andrew and Samantha bought a beachfront mansion in Miami, with a large pool overlooking the ocean. They threw extravagant parties, inviting friends, business people, and even celebrities. Photos of Samantha in evening gowns, smiling brightly next to Andrew at these parties, appeared in tabloids. People praised them as Miami's new, powerful, wealthy couple, forgetting that just weeks before, they had been crying in front of cameras mourning Rebecca's death. Meanwhile, the Coleman family in Chicago was engulfed in grief. Rebecca's parents, two retired teachers, were devastated upon hearing their eldest daughter had gone missing. The mother cried endlessly, saying Rebecca was always the pride of the family. The father sat silently, staring at his daughter's old college diploma hanging on the wall, occasionally muttering, "My daughter couldn't have just left like that." Samantha kept calling home, her voice breaking, saying that losing her sister left an irreplaceable void. The elderly parents believed every word she said, never suspecting that their youngest daughter was part of a dark conspiracy. The media kept digging into the tragedy. Talk shows invited experts to analyze, calling Rebecca's death a reminder of life's fragility, with some even comparing it to other famous disappearances at sea. Andrew appeared as a guest in several interviews, continuing to play the role of the grieving husband. His voice was low and sorrowful, and his eyes welled up, moving many people. Samantha sat silently beside him, wiping away tears, the image of a sister losing her emotional support. While the public believed in the tragedy, Andrew and Samantha quietly enjoyed their new fortune. They bought luxury cars, private yachts, and took trips around Europe. At private parties, they no longer hid their closeness. Public hand touches and knowing smiles, all witnessed by close friends. But no one dared to doubt or speak up, because on paper, they were just brother-in-law and sister-in-law sharing a common grief. Rebecca watched it all from afar, in a small rented room in Mexico. On the television screen, she saw the two traders putting on a perfect act. They had taken her life and name, while enjoying the fortune she had built with sweat and tears. Every smile, Every fake tear they shed only strengthened Rebecca's resolve. She knew time was on her side. Andrew and Samantha thought she was dead, so they grew careless, revealing many weaknesses. Secret accounts, exchanged emails, shady investment contracts, all would become evidence. And when Rebecca returned, the world would see the true faces of two people who once wore the mask of morality to hide their greed. That night, under the flickering yellow light of the rented room, Rebecca sat alone in front of the mirror. Her face with unfamiliar black-dyed hair reflected back, but her eyes showed determination. She whispered, "They think they buried me, but I'm alive, and I will return. Not as a victim, but as someone bringing justice to her own family." 3 months after that fateful night in the Caribbean, Rebecca returned to the U.S. under a false identity. She stepped out of the airport with short black hair, wearing sunglasses, and a long coat that hid her familiar figure. No one in the crowd realized that this was the woman the whole country believed had died in the yacht accident. During her time in Mexico, Rebecca and her team planned everything in detail. Theodore handled the legal paperwork, prepared the arrest warrant, and all necessary documents. Olivia recovered all the messages and emails, reconstructing an accurate timeline of Andrew and Samantha's scheme. Martin tracked their every move in Miami, filming, taking photos, and gathering evidence of their unusually lavish lifestyle. Everything was ready for Rebecca's return day. Rebecca didn't choose to appear in public right away. She wanted Andrew and Samantha to face the truth directly before the police got involved. That's why she decided to turn the Miami mansion into the stage for the final reveal. With Martin's support and a trusted team of technicians, they secretly broke into the mansion while Andrew and Samantha were traveling in Europe. Within a week, hidden cameras were installed everywhere from the living room to the bedrooms. A new electronic lock system was connected to Rebecca's phone, allowing her to control it remotely. She even rearranged the dining room, preparing a table set for 3 with crystal dishes, red wine, and in the center, a gift box wrapped in luxurious silk paper. Inside the box were all the pieces of evidence: recordings, emails, bank accounts, and the signed arrest warrant. That day, Rebecca chose the dress Andrew had always liked most, a deep blue, form-fitting dress with a long cloak over it. Her hair, dyed black, was now recolored to a natural brown. She looked in the mirror, took a deep breath, and whispered to herself the weak woman who died in the Caribbean Sea was gone. "Today, I return as a survivor." Close to midnight, Andrew and Samantha's luxury car pulled up in front of the mansion gate. They had just returned from a long vacation in Europe. Laughter echoed as they entered, carrying designer bags and suitcases full of new clothes. But their steps stopped cold when they saw the shimmering lights inside the house. Andrew frowned, his voice hoarse. "Did you leave the light on?" Samantha shook her head, her face briefly showing fear. They slowly stepped into the living room. In the quiet space, only soft jazz music played. As they reached the dining room, both froze. On the table, 3 seats were carefully set, wine glasses already poured, and a sparkling gift box sat right in the middle. Samantha gripped Andrew's hand tightly, whispering, "What's going on?" Andrew gritted his teeth, scanning the room. "Someone's playing a game with us." He stepped forward, touched the gift box, but didn't open it. The atmosphere was heavy, as if someone was watching them from the shadows. Just then, a familiar voice echoed from the hallway, a warm yet cold female tone. "Welcome home." Andrew spun around, eyes wide with terror. Samantha stepped back sharply, her face pale as a ghost. From the darkness, Rebecca emerged, her brown hair gently loose, eyes sharp as she stared straight at the 2 betrayers. The blue dress made her look like a ghost, returned from the past. But her confident gaze and stride made it clear she was no ghost, but flesh and blood. Andrew stammered. "This can't be." Samantha screamed. "You're dead! We saw you fall into the sea." Rebecca stopped right in front of the table, a cold smile curling on her lips. "You only saw me fall, but you forgot I know how to swim, and more importantly, I was prepared." The room fell silent. Andrew gasped, his eyes shifting from horror to calculation. He growled, "What do you want?" Rebecca pointed to the gift box on the table. "A small gift I prepared just for you two. Please, open it." Andrew hesitated, but finally carefully unwrapped the tissue paper. Seeing what was inside, his face drained of color. Photos, printed emails, bank statements, and finally an arrest warrant. Samantha trembled, covering her mouth, tears welling up. "This is a trap. You're setting us up." Rebecca smirked, her voice icy. "No, I don't need to set a trap. You did that yourselves. I just collected the evidence." In that moment, Andrew lunged at Rebecca like a cornered beast. But just as he reached her, the back door swung open, and Martin, along with 2 security guards, stepped in, restraining him within seconds. Samantha fell to her knees, crying out, begging, saying she didn't want this, and it was all his fault. But Rebecca just stood there, her eyes cold and unyielding. Finally, Rebecca stepped forward, staring directly into the eyes of the 2 who had thrown her into the sea, her voice clear and firm. "This is only the beginning. Tonight, justice will speak." After everything, Rebecca's story isn't just about escaping a sophisticated murder plot. It's proof of inner strength and the human capacity to face the harshest betrayals. Andrew and Samantha once believed money could cover everything, that family and marriage were just facades for exploitation and betrayal, but it was their greed that destroyed them. Greed is like fire. It can ignite your ambitions, but if left unchecked, it will burn everything down. Andrew and Samantha traded everything: love, honor, family, just to satisfy their material desires, but the price was destroying their own lives. No amount of wealth can make up for standing in the defendant's dock with your hands cuffed. The second lesson comes from Rebecca herself. In the moment she was thrown into the sea, surrounded by cold darkness and despair, she could have given up, but instead she chose to believe in herself, in her swimming skills, in her intelligence, and careful preparation. That very belief saved her life and led her to become the ultimate bearer of justice. The story reminds us that sometimes survival doesn't come from outside help, but from the ability to stand on your own. Belief in yourself is the strongest weapon. Rebecca proved that even when you lose everything, you can start over from zero if you don't lose the resilience within your soul. Another lesson lies in independence. Rebecca's success came not only from talent, but from daring to walk on her own 2 feet, working tirelessly to build her company from scratch. Even when betrayed, she didn't seek pity. Instead, she planned, built a team, and faced everything herself. That independence transformed her from a victim into the master of her own destiny. We can also see that justice, though delayed, never disappears. Evidence can be hidden, truth can be distorted, but in the end, lies will reveal their own cracks. Andrew and Samantha thought they could hide their crime, but every email, every transaction, every word spoken in the dark became the thread that pulled them into the light. Justice isn't magic. It's the result of persistence, intelligence, and courage that refuses to back down. This is also a warning about betrayal within the family. There's no pain deeper than being betrayed by someone you trust in your own family. But Rebecca's story shows that even in those circumstances, people can rise up and turn their pain into strength to move forward. Family is a refuge, but if abused, it can become the most dangerous place of all. And when that happens, only clarity and inner strength can help us survive. Rebecca didn't forgive, but she also didn't let hatred consume her. She chose the path of justice, letting truth and the law punish the wrongdoers. That was a wise choice, because revenge fueled by hatred only makes us like the betrayer. Punishment through justice is the way to truly free ourselves. The biggest message from this story is, when life corners us in the darkest place, we can choose to sit and cry, or we can choose to stand up and hold on to even the faintest light. Rebecca chose the light, and she not only survived, but became proof of the strength of resilience. If you're listening to this story, ask yourself, are you blindly trusting someone? Are you relying on a relationship so much that you've forgotten your own independence? And if one day you are betrayed, what will you choose? Forgiveness to find peace in your heart, or seeking justice to regain fairness for yourself? There's no absolute right or wrong answer to this question. Everyone has different circumstances, different limits. But one thing is certain. You always have the right to choose. You are never powerless, as long as you still believe in yourself. Rebecca chose justice, and that was the path that helped her find freedom. What about you? If you've ever experienced betrayal within your family, would you choose forgiveness or seek justice? Share your story, because sometimes your experience can be the light for someone still struggling in the darkness. Rebecca's story ends here, but its impact will surely stay in everyone's hearts for a long time. A journey full of tears, betrayal, moments close to death, but above all, the strength to survive and the desire for justice. Thank you for patiently listening to this story until the very end. Your presence, even just through the screen, is the greatest encouragement for us as we bring you these dramatic and emotional family stories. If today's story made you reflect on faith, family, and inner strength, please leave your thoughts in the comments. We believe that every shared experience can become a source of motivation for others. Don't forget that on the Crying Inside channel, there are many other family stories that might bring you to tears, make you pause and reflect, but will definitely touch your heart. Please hit subscribe on Crying Inside and turn on notifications so you don't miss any stories. Every time you subscribe, you give us the motivation to continue bringing meaningful emotional journeys. Hello, and see you in the next videos.